For Session Daily Update, I'm Sarah Allen. Gun bills are on the agenda for the House Public Safety and Crime Prevention Policy and Finance Committee. Among the bills is House File 372, sponsored by Representative Jim Nash. The bill would allow a Capitol visitor with a permit to carry to do so without notifying the Commissioner of Public Safety, which they are required to do so now in advance. We spoke to Representative Nash earlier this session about his bill.
I'm a very strong Second Amendment advocate, and when I wanted to carry at the Capitol, I saw that I had to go through these hoops. And in meeting with several folks who are an active part of the gun lobby, in specific GOCRA and MNGOPAC and the NRA, we all sat down and talked about how can we create a bill that will really respect the law-abiding citizens who have already gone through the process of being given their permit to carry. How do we make sure that they're allowed to carry in the people's house? Because the people of Minnesota own the Capitol building, and these are Minnesota citizens.
Let's now go to room 10 of the State Office Building for this meeting.
Alrighty, we're going to get started and call the meeting to order, the Public Safety and Crime Prevention Policy and Finance Committee, and start out with the roll call.
Representative Cornish.
Here.
Representative Johnson. Here. Representative Considine. Representative Dean. Representative Hertas.
Here.
Representative Hillstrom.
Here.
Representative Howe.
Here.
Representative Lomer.
Here.
Representative Lucero.
Here.
Representative Newberger. Representative O'Neill.
Here.
Representative Quam. Representative Rosenthal.
Here.
Representative Schoen.
Aye.
Representative Ward.
Here.
Representative Winkler.
Here.
And Representative Zerwas.
Here. Okay, a quorum being present here, we'll ask someone to move the minutes of March 11th. Representative O'Neill moves the minutes of March 11th. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, it's Fun Day, Gun Day at the Capitol. And I'm just going to tell you the basic rules. what we're going to do is have a pretty open meeting. We're not going to put any time limits on anybody. We're going to have all of the supporters come up first, and then we're going to have all the opposition after that. And then we'll try something a little fun. We'll have a rebuttal at the end of equal time by both parties. The supporters will come up for a couple of minutes, and the opposition will come up for a couple of minutes, because sometimes you always wish there was something that you would have said or cleared up or qualified. And so we're not going to limit any questions or any answers, and I think so everybody will be satisfied at the end. That's why we're coming back tonight, and we'll stay to midnight if we have to, and get all the questions answered, and I'm looking forward to a good day. We would ask that we keep rhetoric out of it and smart aleck comments and this and that. Those of you who were at the hearings before, sometimes we cheer or boo. We'd ask that you not do that for both the support and the opposition, so we keep it orderly and move fast. We could probably get all three of these bills done actually by noon. I don't think they're all that controversial as some like guns on campus and the Castle Doctrine and other bills that I've had. So we should be in good shape. And if not, we'll come back. And there won't be any surprise votes or any trickery today. I'm going to have GOP and there's going to be DFL moving in and out at different times. One thing I would like the media to know and the people in the public to know is that legislators don't just have this to do. There's some of us that have to be in 2 other places, and news conferences and all. So if you see somebody walking out, they're not avoiding a vote. They're, well, I can't say particularly about that, but that's what they've been accused of in the past. But don't just infer that that's happening because we got so many things going on. And we'll make sure that everybody is here and had ample time to get back before a vote is taken today. So we've got 3 bills up. Some are more controversial than others. Oh, the other thing that I would ask is that we base our decisions and things today, and my members also, on fact and not fear. You just, after the whole day gets done and all the testimony, just think about not what could happen, what might happen, but what's happened in the past and what the actual facts are that we put out. And actually be open to your own opinion after all of that. But remember, try not to cheer or jeer anybody. And any questions? Yes, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I do appreciate that you're not going to put time limits and you're going to allow everybody to have the opportunity to speak and understand that members are going to come and go. I do have one question. So I assume that folks may have an opinion on more than one proposal. So are you asking that if the person comes to testify that they tell you their opinion just on that one proposal, and then each proposal they would come up again and say what their position was? I just want to make sure that we know whether folks should keep their comments to the proposal before them, or if they come up once, if they should say everything they have to say.
Oh, thank you, Representative Hillstrom. Well, we'd like to restrain your comments to the bill at hand, if that's what you mean.
Yes, that's exactly
We'll
what I mean.
take these bills one at a time, and please don't look ahead or talk about things that are bothering you about other bills or issues. Just keep it constrained to the restrained to the bill at hand. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. All right, are we ready? The first bill up will be Representative Nash, House File 372. And I believe, will all these 3 go to the register? All 3 of these bills will go straight to the general register, or attempt to.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you, and I would like to...
Well, I'll move your bill for you.
I appreciate that, and just wanted to point out that unfortunately Chair Davids is not with us here today. He would remind you that I am a freshman and owe you all treats, so I brought them accordingly. So appreciate that.
All right, I'll move your bill, House File 372, be recommended to pass and move to the general register.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, House File 372, I would consider, as the chair said, a very non-controversial bill. It provides for folks who have been successfully issued a permit to carry after undergoing training and scrutiny to have that constitute notification here at the Capitol grounds. In the previous iterations of things, folks have had to do a separate and what is realistically a redundant step for notification to carry here at the Capitol grounds. And it is my assertion that it is redundant. It does no additional, does not provide any additional security, does not provide any additional actionable items for the members of these people who have to provide us security here on the Capitol grounds. And therefore, we would like to assert that the successful issuance of a permit to carry is now going to constitute notification to carry here in the Capitol grounds. I do have some testifiers and would like to call them up. Mr. Rothman, I believe. And I also have Lieutenant Colonel Schrofer, who will be testifying as well.
You're welcome, sir. If you state your name and organization you represent and begin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Andrew Rothman. I'm the president of Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance, a civil rights group that has been in Minnesota since 1989. The history of carry in Minnesota has a few steps in it. Before 1974, there were no state laws relating to the carry of a pistol. In 1974, we had a May issue carry law passed, which means that permit applicants would have to ask their police chief or sheriff for permission to get a permit to carry, and those police chiefs or sheriffs could say yes or no. For the next 20 years until 1994, there were no reported problems with permit holders at the state capitol. In 1994, however, there was a state representative whose mother was concerned about his safety at the state capitol. The state capitol security really didn't know who had a carry permit in Minnesota, even though there'd never been a problem at the capitol, and this concerned Representative Rhodes at the time. And so he had a floor amendment in the House that added the requirement to notify the Commissioner of Public Safety before a permit holder could carry at the Capitol or in any building in the Capitol area. The Capitol area, or any state building in the Capitol area. The Capitol area is defined for zoning purposes, and it extends several blocks north of University and south across the highway and includes the History Center, among other state buildings. It made some sort of sense in 1994 because these carry permits were issued by more than 500 separate police organizations, police chiefs and sheriffs around the state. And when they issued a carry permit, they would take the card and they'd roll it into their Selectric typewriter, and they would type that card, and then they'd put a piece of paper in a file cabinet in Candy, Ojai County, or in Duluth or in Rochester, and that's where the only record would be. So in 1994, it did make a little bit of sense to notify the Commissioner of Public Safety, not that there'd ever been a problem. Well, in 2003, we passed the shall issue carry law, which says that any law-abiding person who takes a class and passes a background check and has a clean history as far as drug abuse and mental health can get a permit to carry. There are 190,000 people who have that permit to carry now. In 2003, the legislature appropriated $1.2 million to the Commissioner of Public Safety for the purposes of creating a statewide database of every single permit holder in the state. And so when a sheriff issues a carry permit, there's a transmission of that data immediately to the state, where it's available to every police officer and sheriff's deputy in the state 24/7, 365. At that moment, the Capitol notification became redundant and an anachronism. And yet since 1994, carry permit holders have had to make that notification even since they were in the database until 2000, or after 2003. So for the last 13 years, carry permit holders, law-abiding folks who'd proven it, who wanted to come to the Capitol, would have to send a letter to the Commissioner of Public Safety saying, "Dear Commissioner, I'm in your database." So this notification has become redundant since 2003. It certainly is now. And since between 1974 and today, we've still had no problems with permit holders at the state Capitol. I recommend that you ask Lieutenant Colonel Schrofer, when she comes up, what she's aware of the history of carry permit holders at the Capitol. I think that you'll get a pretty favorable answer. When you make this notification, it's good for life. And so I notified in 2003 when I got my first carry permit, and here we are 13 years later, and that notification is still good. And so it's pretty clear that it doesn't provide any actual safety mechanism, that it's just a piece of paperwork whose time has gone. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rothman. This one-time notification, is that law? It seems to be a little vague around that. I don't know if you have the answer to it or if our staff has the answer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Rosenthal. It is law. It's in Minnesota Statute 609.66, subdivision 1F. And it requires that notification be made. It doesn't specify any expiration for that, and so it has been the position of the Department of Public Safety that one-time notification is sufficient as long as that person is a permit holder.
You want to hear from research?
Yes, please, Mr.
Mr. Diebel?
Mr. Chair and members, that's an accurate representation of the law. It's a very general requirement to provide notice to the commissioner of your intent, whether you come to the Capitol or not. Once provided, there's no provision for expiration of that notice.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Rothman, is it, in summary, then, instead of calling back to the Capitol Security and asking them to look in their 3-ring binder for the permit notification, all they have to really do now is just instantly search the database and get rid of the 3-ring binder, I would imagine. Would that be accurate?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Nash?
members, I think that's an accurate depiction. The current file system is a paper-based system. And we've heard a lot here since I've been here, and yeah, I'm a freshman, so it's only been a few months. We've talked about a lot of technological solutions. We've got a database that we appropriated $1.2 million for. The database is accessible after hours, where the paper file isn't necessarily available after hours. We've got the database that is updated daily as people around the state are issued their permit to carry. The hanging file doesn't necessarily do that, the paper file in the office. And I think the most important thing to recognize about the database solution versus the paper solution is this, that somewhere on the Capitol grounds, the many buildings that compose the Capitol grounds, there may be someone who comes, and we'll use the History Center, for example, who hasn't notified because as Mr. Rothman can attest to, the requirements to teach that notification is not present in law for permit to carry instructors. So someone could come from, let's say, the Iron Range somewhere and come to visit the History Center, and they don't have that notification submitted. They are now a felon because that is in law. They have committed a felony. And we think that this is a more elegant and technology-oriented solution that works for all Minnesotans who have gone to the trouble to go through the training, go through the scrutiny, pay their county sheriff to acquire the permit. So yes, Mr. Chair, you're right in saying that the paper file is much slower and not as robust, and it really doesn't work for the folks who are here to protect us. And I think that this might be a good time to call the Lieutenant Colonel down if she wouldn't mind joining us. There she is.
Good morning, Colonel. If you'd give us your name and title and organization and go ahead and begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Representatives. My name is Shelley Schrofer, and I'm Lieutenant Colonel with the Minnesota State Patrol. My primary intent here this morning is to give an overview of the notification system, the process that between the Commissioner's Office and Capitol Security, as well as answer any questions that you may have about that process. When a permit holder sends a notification to the Commissioner, that notification can come in a couple different forms. Typically, it's email or hard copy. However, it could come in just about any form because the form of the notification isn't defined currently under statute. Once the Commissioner's Office receives that notification, they fairly immediately turn that around to Capitol Security. Capitol Security takes in that information, and we record a first name, a last name, a date of birth if it's provided, and the date of notification. And we file that in a running log. It's a hard copy log. And just a little bit of point of clarification of Rep. Nash here. That log is kept in our dispatch center. Our dispatch center is a 24/7 operation, so we do have access to that 24/7. If we happen to observe somebody on the complex who's carrying a pistol, a law enforcement officer will approach that individual. We will ask them if they have a valid permit to carry. And we will make a CJIS check on that permit to ensure that the permit is valid and it's not expired. Once we receive that information, we then would contact our dispatch center to verify whether or not a notification has been received by the Commissioner's office. It's a very simple process. It's a short process, and that really sums it up. As Rep. Nash mentioned, if we do have someone on the complex who is carrying a pistol and they have a valid permit to carry, but they are not in the notification system, they have not notified the Commissioner, they would be subject to felony charges as the statute is today.
And that, members, is one of the reasons why we're here, what we call the trap. We would rather not have somebody be charged with a felony and under this notification procedure. And so, back to the summary of what's happening here, we would just like to get rid of the paper mess and go to the instant notification. Representative Hillstrom, followed by Representative Schoen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know how many people have been referred for felony charges based on this lack of notification?
None to my knowledge.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I continue to expand the Capitol complex because I want Capitol security to protect more areas. And so is there a map someplace of what areas would be included for folks to know that if they happen to go to one of the buildings on the other side of the highway, that's part of the Capitol complex? Or is there any place where people can get actual notification of what is the Capitol complex?
Colonel?
That's, Mr. Chair, Representative, that is defined in statute. So if someone were to go to the statute, they can see exactly, specifically what boundaries are laid out for the Capitol complex.
Representative Hillstrom? Okay. Representative Schoen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have signage up that says, you know, if you're going to carry on the Capitol complex that you need to report to DPS?
Colonel?
Mr. Chair, Representative Schoen, there is no signage.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Schoen.
has this particular topic been addressed with the Capitol Security Commission? I know Representative Nash and I just joined onto that, and I don't, we certainly haven't had a meeting to discuss this particular topic about the Capitol complex or been a part of this before this bill was introduced. Do you know any history with that?
Yes, Representative Schoen, I think we've gone over for at least a couple of years and had meetings specifically about Capitol security and the carry of handguns. And I can't remember what the commission was called. Maybe one of the testifiers can remember. We had hearings this last year and the year before, I believe. And there was some that wanted to change it and some that didn't. And but one thing that was uncovered during the testimony is that there wasn't any problems with permit holders, and everybody seemed to kind of wonder why we had the paper filed if everybody, if they had access to the database, why go through the hassle of the paperwork, but nothing was done at that time to get rid of it. Okay, Representative Johnson.
Mr. Chair, one of the questions I have, Gokra is kind enough to put out a map showing the Capitol complex area. And if you actually look at it, a little hard to read, but if you are walking on a street, actually 2 blocks from here, on the west side of the road, you're not in the Capitol complex area. But if you're on the east side of the road, you are. So basically, if you're walking down the sidewalk, you'd have to notify the commissioner just to walk down the sidewalk. It's 2 blocks from here, and if you go north, it's 7 blocks north of here. It's part of the Capitol complex. So it's a large area where if you don't notify, and if people they're thinking they're 7 blocks from the Capitol, they would not even think they're on the Capitol grounds.
Representative Nash.
Mr. Chair, Representative Johnson, thank you for pointing that out. And that's really one of the impetuses for us to bring this forward is, you know, the folks who have undergone the scrutiny and have acquired their permit to carry are willingly submitting themselves and declaring themselves essentially law-abiding folks who just wish to carry under their Second Amendment rights. And this current methodology creates, for lack of a better term, a gotcha moment for them. So they could be on campus somewhere in the Capitol campus, whether they're out for a stroll or they're there to visit the History Center, they could become a felon just by walking down a street. And we feel very strongly that the technological solution with a $1.2 million database that was appropriated by the legislature is a far more comprehensive, straightforward, and fair solution to the notification process.
Okay, Representative Hertaus, and then Representative Hillstrom, and then we'll probably move to, do you have any, before Representative Hertaus asks a question, do you have any more support testifiers, or?
No, sir.
Okay, Representative Hertaus.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Nash, for bringing this forward. I just wanted to follow up also on what Representative Johnson said. When you look at this map, somebody who's legally permitted might check into the Kelly Inn, of all places, and not even think twice to think that they're technically on the Capitol complex. So a tourist from greater Minnesota that has a permit, or even somebody who has reciprocity with our state, could check into the motel or go over to Sears with no intention of even coming to the government buildings, and are in violation of the law and potentially subscribe to a felony violation. So thanks for bringing this forward, and we need to fix this.
Mr. Chair, Representative Hertaus, thank you for pointing that out. And it is a large area, and we want to make sure that we're affording the people who have undergone the scrutiny and have legally been issued a permit to carry are not set up for that gotcha moment that we talked about.
Okay, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, you were great to say we really need to make sure that we're talking about facts. And so I have been consulting with staff, because I noticed Sears was on the map, and I wanted to make certain, and the light rail line is on the map, and I wanted to make certain that someone riding the light rail wouldn't be in violation already, or someone in Sears wouldn't be in violation as defined under the Capitol grounds. And after consulting with nonpartisan staff, and they can answer this if they'd like, but on line 1.13, it reflects current law, and it actually says in any state building. So if you're just on the light rail, you're not in violation of the statute. If you're in Sears, you're not in violation of the statute. It's about going into a public state building. And I just want to make sure that we keep the facts on the record as we go forward, Mr. Chair.
So that if we pass this bill, then we clarify it and don't have to worry about boundary lines, because once you get the permit, it will be your notification. Any other questions here? You want to bring up your opposition? Is there people who'd like to testify in opposition to this change? And Ms. I pronounce it Martins or Martins?
Joan Peterson.
Oh, Joan Peterson? Okay, Joan. Welcome. If you would state your name and the organization you represent, and begin, ma'am.
Okay. Chair Cornish and members of the committee, my name is Joan Peterson from Protect Minnesota and the Brady Campaign, both working to prevent gun violence. I live in Duluth and drove down here today for this hearing. I know that you all care about public safety, since you do sit on this committee, and you all serve different constituencies. I'm aware of that. Everyone believes in public safety. When it comes to gun issues, though, there appear to be different ideas about how that is achieved. I sit on the side that believes that having loaded guns in public places doesn't make me or those around me safer. I come by this position because of having lost a sister in a domestic shooting, so wanting to keep others safe from devastating gun violence is really important to me. I know that others believe having a gun with them wherever they go will make them safer. A newly released report from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension about Minnesota's conceal and carry law revealed that in 2014 there were 0 instances of a gun permit carrier using a gun in a justifiable self-defense shooting. The same was true in the year 2006, 2007, 2008, 2010, and 2011. In other years, I believe there were several cases. In 2014, there were 3 homicides committed by permit holders and a number of other crimes committed. If Capitol Security gets no notification at all, there will be no way of knowing exactly who is carrying around inside of who is carrying a gun around inside of the Capitol complex. I actually see no reason for anyone to carry a gun here where the people's business is conducted. We can all have reasonable discussions and agree civilly to disagree on some issues. I really see no danger here. There are those, however, who have bad intent, who may disagree with some of your decisions, who could be carrying a gun around here and we would not know if they are a legal permit holder or not. As we saw in New Hope, people disgruntled about politics can become violent. This is why we should be more vigilant about guns at the Capitol, not less. We should not be allowing loaded guns here at all, except by trained law enforcement and security personnel. I'm sure you believe that something like that could never happen here, just as I believe that one of my loved ones would never be shot and killed. But bad things actually do happen. Why make it easier for bad things to happen if we care about public safety? So I actually am here to urge you to oppose HF 1434. I don't believe we need more gun carriers where school kids come on field trips, lobbyists meet, citizens come for rallies and meetings, and you do your work. This is all about keeping the public safe from unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. And any questions? Any other, anybody would like to, from the opposition, anybody opposed? Go ahead, sir. Bring your testimony to the table, your name and organization you represent, if you do, and go ahead.
Bill Krause, I live in Plymouth, Minnesota. Don't really represent an organization. I'm here on my own. I generally do support Protect Minnesota, but I'm on my own on this one. I'm a gun owner. I've been a gun owner most of my life. Being a gun owner, you have responsibilities. What I see in the laws that come out of this organization many times seems to be irresponsible. Conceal and carry, I don't agree with it. If you're so afraid to walk in public, why do you need to have why are you carrying a gun if you're that afraid? It comes down to fear and intimidation. Responsibility. If you're passing a background check, you're coming out to be a responsible, law-abiding gun owner, why do you need a gun in a public building that makes laws for or against what you like? As a gun owner myself, I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted with the NRA, the gun lobby, and I'll say the mainly extreme gun owners that believe someone is going to get them, and that includes mainly, a lot of times, the government. And one of those examples is Clyde Bundy in Nevada. Someone is coming to get me, and I need to be armed and close to be dangerous to protect myself from an imaginary fear. We don't need guns in a public building where we're making laws about guns and other things that people like or dislike. We have enough discourse here already. Thank you.
What would you, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Bill Krause.
Okay. Mr. Troll, what would you say about the instance in Canada where the terrorists ran into the government building and the only way it was stopped was whacked by one of the leaders there? What would happen if that person would have been there with a gun?
Well, thank you for bringing up Canada, because Canada has some different laws than the United States does in the way of how it handles guns. My daughter actually lives in Canada. I just visited her up in Vancouver. We were watching the news. And it came up the gun shootings that were going on in the U.S., which seems to be a daily, hourly thing. And she just mentions, you know, we never hear about this in Canada. We don't have this problem in Canada. Very rare. Why do we have this problem here?
And
we have the most guns, and we have the most gun violence. Guns don't keep us safer.
And your answer to my question is?
What? How often does that happen?
Yeah,
How often does somebody with a gun save somebody else with a gun?
Pretty often.
Oh, yeah, not as often. Most countries have this figured out. We haven't yet.
Okay, thank you, sir. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make 2 points with both testifiers. First, I heard that this is the people's business. Our other civil rights, there is no expectation that we check them at the door when we enter this building, such as the freedom of expression or the freedom of assembly, etc. And the Second Amendment is no different than any other. Second, it's not about fear. To exercise our civil liberties is not about fear. It's because it is our God-given right.
And members, I apologize a little bit. I violated my own rule about keeping it to the bill, so in the future I'll just keep it to the bill and what we're addressing here instead of nationwide gun policy. So Representative Schoen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to address what you addressed there, that we're getting off topic. But on that, since in that discussion, the piece that you bring up was a staff member in Parliament there. And we've increased troopers here at the Capitol, which means we have more armed people, and we're increasing that budget the way it is. And one of the things that we don't talk about, and I've talked about this with Representative Nash, was that as police officers, if I was assigned to this area, one of my main fears is, and I won't, the folks that have permit to carries they've been pretty good. We don't have any instances of problems so far. My fear is with the person that does come in rogue, and someone that is trying to help is also going to get shot by a police officer because we don't know who they are, and they pull out a gun. And I said that's one of the considerations that need to be thought about. Maybe the average person thinks that, well, I wouldn't do that. But you and I, when we train and when these troopers train in a shoot or don't shoot scenario, it's called stress inoculation. Representative Johnson, you went through it too. The average person can't handle that. They don't train for that. Maybe some folks do. And thank you if you do, because I appreciate it, because that's a big deal. But when we talk about, well, I'm going to be able to respond, the average person really is not going to be able to, because it's going to cause a stress level that we train to bypass that stress level. We react. At that point, law enforcement isn't thinking. Everybody's reacting. So, I mean, that's just one very important piece of this as well, too.
Well, thank you, Representative Schoen. I am a 32 retired cop, and I'm not about to turn over responsibility for my own personal safety to a cop. I'm sorry. They can't be everywhere, and I have no problem with the many armed people at the Capitol. And I remember Mr. Samuelson, I think he was a city councilman, standing outside on the Capitol steps. And we were right in front of the House of Representatives, and he came in to voice his displeasure with one of my gun bills, and I said, I told him, I said, what would you do right now if somebody ran in here and started shooting? And his words were one, he says, duck. I choose not to take that option. Representative Nash, you had something to say?
Mr. Chairman, members, I appreciate Representative Schoen's comment, but I wanted to point out that by the bill that we have before us, you will know. Notification is still being conducted. We've heard that the paper notification is slow, redundant, and doesn't really add anything additional. So while I appreciate your point, notification does happen, and it actually is on hand for you to know were you to be charged with defending and protecting us here, much like the troopers are. So, you know, it has happened, and notification is taken care of in this bill. So it's just being taken to really a much more logical end, because we've already appropriated that $1.2 million database that is quickly accessible. And Representative Schoen, I think you have access to that yourself when you're in your squad card, were you to make an inquiry if someone had a permit to carry. So, you know, I guess I would ask, if you yield to a question?
Well, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Mr. Chair, Representative Schoen, you know, are you more comfortable in calling back to dispatch and asking for a paper copy of something or a database?
Well, first off, Mr. Chair, I was addressing Representative Cornish's remarks. Your bill is talking about the registration, or the system here. I think you've demonstrated that if it's difficult, it's difficult. I think my comments are about the policy as a whole. If your bill addresses something that's not working and it makes you feel better, then let's do it. I mean, what's the difference at this point? What you pointed out. I think that maybe the intent was back in the day that if you come on the Capitol grounds, there should have been signs up that should have said, hey, just so you know, because we've failed, and the legislature has failed to make sure the folks that handle the on-site maintenance didn't put up signs to make sure people knew about it. That should have happened. Like, if you enter this building and you're a permit to carry, you need to check in with the Department of Public Safety. And maybe that should have been a daily thing back. If you come on the grounds or in the building, it should have been every time you visit. I don't know if that was their intent back then. But as far as this goes, we need to continue the conversation about what is safe, because the reality is those folks that come in, we don't allow them in courtrooms, and these rooms here are nearly the same as a courtroom in some instances because of the volatility of the issues that happen here. And so because it's such a political issue and so divisive, we aren't willing to have those conversations and let the troopers and the folks that deal with security here, they should be giving us the advice. And then we should be able to react on that and say, yeah, okay, if that's what you need to do to make this place safe, that's fine. In your instance, in this bill, I don't know that anybody is saying that it's safer today or tomorrow either way. So we can move on with this. But we're going back and forth on rhetoric now.
Mr. Hills? Okay, doesn't look like there's any more questions. What, have you got anybody else? If not, any public testimony? I think we're done. So, Representative Nash will renew his motion, House File 372 be recommended to pass and move to the General Register. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you much, Representative Nash.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Representative Anderson, House File 1434, suppressors.
Treats are here somehow, guys.
You're covered. Or a covered. Oh, there you go.
Thanks.
Anybody want to move the suppressor bill?
Mr. Chair, I'll move House File 1434 to go to the General Registry.
Okay, Representative Howell has moved your bill. Go ahead and begin, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I bring to you House File number 1434 today. Excuse me, I have a cold. House File 13.
I forgot to have you say your name.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Representative Mark Anderson.
Thank you.
House File 1434 would bring Minnesota into the American mainstream, joining 39 other states that allow possession of sound suppressors on firearms. These devices were invented in 1902 by the same man who invented the automobile muffler, and both were marketed as, quote, silencers. But that name only reflected slick marketing and not science. Despite what you've seen in the movies or heard on the local news, firearm suppressors don't make a gun silent. What they do is reduce the noise from a rifle or a pistol from instantly damaging to just really, really loud. A typical suppressed rifle is about 8 times louder than a jackhammer. Suppressors are, first and foremost, safety devices. Like a seat belt, they don't completely prevent injury, but they do a lot to reduce the risk and severity. Besides the clear health impact, the sound reduction provided by suppressors have 2 other key benefits. 1, noise pollution can be reduced. Neighbors, even out in the country, benefit from reduced noise from shooting activities. And the second benefit, students, instructors, range officers, competitors, and recreational shooters can better hear each other. This is absolutely critical for safety when teaching or participating in group shooting activities. Those who oppose this common sense legislation will tell you, without our state ban, it will be a free-for-all, with criminals buying suppressors left and right. That's just not true. Sound suppressors are regulated by the federal government exactly the same strict way that a machine gun is. So no, there won't be a rash of ninja-related shootings. There haven't been in the other 39 states that allow these safety devices, and there won't be here. To talk about some of the technical and legal aspects of suppressors, we have Andrew Rothman, President of the Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance. Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sir, go ahead, state your name and begin.
I'm Andrew Rothman. I'm the president of Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance. To get a little technical here, because I'm really kind of a nerd about this sort of thing, there are three kinds of noises that a firearm makes when you fire it. There's the click-clack of the action, of the bolt going back and forth, or the slide going back and forth. There's the boom of that gunpowder exploding, and there's the crack, which is the sonic boom of the bullet going faster than the speed of sound. Now, of those three sounds that a firearm makes, a sound suppressor can really only reduce the sound of that boom of the exploding gunpowder. This is a sound suppressor, and unbelievably, this device is treated as a deadly firearm by the federal government, and so it's very tightly regulated. I imagine that this could be deadly if you hit somebody with it hard enough, but it's not really very dangerous by itself. It's an accessory in the same way that a holster is an accessory, or a sling is an accessory, or a cleaning rod is an accessory. But it is regulated by the federal government. I don't own this one. I'm not allowed to own this in Minnesota, because even though it could save my hearing, it would make me a felon to possess this, because we don't allow that in Minnesota. Fortunately, the legal possessor of this highly dangerous little tube is right here, and so it is legal for me to show it to you right here, because he's still in possession of it. Sound is measured in decibels, and every 10 decibels is a doubling in the apparent level of sound. So a jackhammer tearing up the sidewalk or the street is 110 decibels. Twice as loud as that is 120. Twice as loud as that is 130. Twice as loud as that, or 8 times as loud, is 140. 140 decibels, 8 times louder than a jackhammer. That's about how loud a suppressed rifle can be. An unsuppressed rifle is about 180 decibels. An unsuppressed pistol, about 170 decibels, which means that that suppressed pistol, I'm throwing out a lot of numbers here, gets down to about that 140, about that 8 times louder than a jackhammer. So although Hiram Maxim was very brilliant in his marketing and calling it a silencer, it's really not accurate, because 8 times louder than a jackhammer is anything but silent. These devices are tightly regulated by the federal government. You wouldn't believe how tightly regulated they are. It's just like owning a machine gun. It's a very difficult and expensive and time-consuming process. If we lived in one of the 39 free states that allow the possession of these important safety devices, here's the process that you would follow, and here's the process that we would follow in Minnesota once we get rid of this, this prohibition that makes no sense. First, I would go to the store where a specially federally licensed dealer can sell these suppressors. They cost $500 or $800 or $1,000. And I'd have to plunk down my money with that dealer, but I wouldn't get to take it home with me. Instead, I would get the serial number and I'd fill that out on a form, and then I'd take that form and I'd go to the police department, I'd get fingerprints made. And then I would go to Kinko's and get passport-style photographs taken. And then I would take all that information and I'd write a check for $200 to the federal government and send that application to the ATF, where they'd take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months to process it. I'm sorry, one more thing. Before I send in that application, I have to go to my local police chief or sheriff. And I've got to get the local police chief or sheriff to sign off on that form saying, yeah, to the best of my knowledge, Andrew is not prohibited from possessing a firearm or this device in the state. And so there's the first background check. Then I send my $200 and all of this documentation to the federal government, and they sit on it for the better part of a year. They do another background check. And eventually they process that paperwork, and they take a tax stamp and they affix it to my paperwork. And they would send that back to me. Now that I've got that tax stamp and I've had 2 background checks, I can go back to the dealer who got my money 9 months ago, and $200 poor to enrich the federal government. I can take that paperwork, show it to the dealer who, oh wait, he's got to do a background check. There's a third background check at that federally licensed dealer before I am allowed to take that suppressor home. Then it's under very, very tight federal legal control. If I leave that on the table and go to work and my wife is home, she's a felon. I have to keep that suppressor locked up, unavailable to her or to anybody else. I can't loan it to a friend. I can't walk out of the range while someone else is shooting my suppressed gun. I've got to be right there, just like Luke is right there, keeping an eye on that, that highly dangerous tube of metal. And that's what it is. It's a tube of metal. Inside it has some baffles in it. It works just like an automotive suppressor. Those hot gases come through and they slow down and they cool down as they go through that tube. And so it makes less of a loud boom when it goes through. This is the process that would exist if we got rid of the federal, or of the state prohibition on these suppressors. The federal law would still apply in all of its splendid glory.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions now, or should we move to the next? Representative Quam, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it was sort of timely. Someone accidentally bumped the. We've got a small elevator here in a room, and it seemed like almost everybody sort of, jumped a little bit. I'm assuming that on a decibel scale, that barely even registers yet. Everyone in this room, jumped. So, yeah, I don't think that would even show up on the scale you're showing below the lawnmower and et cetera. So I'm glad that the people in the room were able to understand how we can react to a sound like that, and probably would definitely react if we heard a suppressor sound.
Well, unfortunately, you're going to hear from opponents that they make
Mr.
guns.
Rothman, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, Representative Quam. I'm new here. You may hear that these devices make a firearm silent, and obviously nothing could be further from the truth. And I don't think that we're going to have a rash of ninja shootings. And in fact, we have the history to show that. Suppressors have always been legal with these federal hoops in some states. They're currently legal in 39 states. So the vast majority of states, they are legal for the people who are willing to pass a background check and have the money and have the patience to wait for it. Now, you can get charged with a federal felony for unlawful possession of a suppressor. You get 10 years even if you don't do anything bad with it, just for having it. And in fact, if you take a 2-liter soda bottle and you put some packing peanuts in it and you shove that on the end of your barrel, that's a felony. That's 10 years because it's a suppressor. A criminal who would be interested in quieting the sound of a firearm isn't likely to go through that very expensive and time-consuming process when he can do a fairly good job with a soda bottle or with a Fram oil filter from the local auto parts store for $12.
The Representative Dean, I should have probably encouraged him to wait, because after we get a couple more testifiers, it'll probably answer questions that are going to be asked now. But go ahead, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the testifier, Mr. Rothman, you just mentioned that if you had gone through the process and you have a silencer and you leave it on your table and your wife is home and you leave, she would be in violation of a felony, correct?
That's correct. It's a federal felony.
And how is that enforced?
Mr. Rothman, and let's try to keep our answers short, too. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Representative, like any other crime, it would have to be caught and it would have to be prosecuted.
Representative Dean.
So in the same way that there's almost no ability to enforce trigger locks unless there's an accident or an event, there's really no way to enforce that because officers can't come into your house without a search warrant or your permission, correct?
Mr. Rothman.
Mr. Chair, Representative, God bless America. The police cannot come into your house and see what felonies you might be committing. I've heard that each of us commits 3 felonies a day unwittingly.
All right. If you've got any other testifiers in back here, Mr. or Representative Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Next, we'd like to bring up certified firearm safety instructor and federally licensed dealer Luke Soderling.
Welcome, sir. If you would state your name and begin.
Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Luke Soderling. I'm a permit to carry instructor certified by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension here in Minnesota. I'm also certified by the Bureau of Criminal Identification in Utah. In my classes, I have hundreds of students each year shooting thousands of rounds. I myself, as a competitive shooter, shoot thousands of rounds myself through training and practice as well as competition. I'm here to urge you to repeal the state prohibition against sound suppressors for two main reasons. The first of which I would like to reduce my exposure to muzzle blast induced hearing loss. It's a real problem that instructors find. The second reason is training in competitive environments are much safer places when range commands don't need to be shouted over hearing protection, such as earmuffs and earplugs. In some cases at the range, my students don't know who I'm talking to, and in order to understand better, they turn towards me to see my lips. This is not a safe thing to be doing on the firing range while holding a loaded firearm. Years ago, I attended the Hibbing Law Enforcement Academy. And during a live fire training exercise, the instructor had to use his foot to get the attention of a student who was shooting in the prone position. This startled them, and they turned, waving a loaded gun at everybody on the firing line and the instructor themselves. As an instructor, I find myself having to carefully place my hand on the shoulder of a shooter to get the attention if they're unable to hear my commands. Not being able to hear and respond to the urgent command is a real safety issue for a range officer and everyone at the range. As a federally licensed Class 3 dealer, I have sound suppressors for demonstration purposes. This is one of them right here. This is a .22 caliber suppressor. It's very small. This would go on a .22 rifle. A larger suppressor would be significantly bigger. When I demonstrate these to people, I hear two things all the time. They say, man, I thought that would be a lot quieter. And the other thing they always say is, why are these things not legal? Like safety goggles, earmuffs, and helmets, suppressors are safety tools. Please restore for me and all Minnesotans the right to protect our hearing and make our ranges as safe as they can be. I want to thank you for your time, consideration. I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. And bring up another one, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next I have Mr. Kevin Vick. Mr. Vick is an avid and responsible shooter, and at a moment's malfunction changed his hearing health permanently.
Mr. Vick, if you restate your name and organization and begin, sir.
Yes, sir. Kevin Vick. Excuse me. I am the owner of Crucible Arms out of Lakeville, Minnesota. Mr. Chair, committee, thank you for your time this afternoon. This morning yet. As I said, I'm the owner of Crucible Arms. I teach firearm safety and handling courses as a certified instructor. I'm here today to talk about the health benefits associated with the use of suppressors. When I was 8 years old, my father taught me the importance of wearing hearing protection to reduce, however not eliminate, the potential for hearing damage that can occur when target shooting or hunting. Hearing damage among shooting sport enthusiasts is well documented and undisputed. A study of recreational firearm use and hearing loss published by the Archives of Family Medical Journal shows hunters and target shooters experiencing significantly higher levels of hearing loss over time, even when wearing hearing protection, when compared to the general population. Additionally, University of Florida has reported that those that are on certain medications such as Cialis, sorry, I had to say it, people with conditions such as diabetes or people who are under chemotherapy have a significant reaction to the discharge of a firearm and can suffer very significant side effects. Those with no experience with suppressors will have you believe the Hollywood myth of silencing. Independent, validated testing shows suppressors reduce a typical sporting rifle, as has been said, from about 167 decibels to roughly 130 decibels, which is still 35 to 40 times louder than a jackhammer. However, that difference a suppressor makes is enough to eliminate immediate pain and permanent hearing damage. Last December, I was shooting at target practice. I was wearing a popular, high-quality set of hearing earmuff protection. What I didn't realize was that my eye protection caused a slight gap in the seal with the earmuff. I was standing at exactly the right angle in exactly the wrong time when my son discharged his firearm. It permanently damaged my hearing. As this audiology report shows, I have permanent loss of over 50% of my ability to hear normal conversations and have tinnitus, a permanent and constant ringing and distortion of sound in my left ear as a result of a single shot. The use of a legal suppressor would have prevented my hearing loss. My goal today is to help the members of this committee understand the health benefits of allowing the legal use of suppressors, as 39 other states have already done, in reducing irreversible hearing loss among your constituents. I serve as one example out of many who could have and have yet to be helped by the passage of this bill. Thank you, and I'm open for your questions.
Thank you. Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the testifier. You had mentioned that it was your son's firearm that caused the hearing loss?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, yes, sir.
I'm representative, but
I'm sorry.
that's okay. So if he wouldn't have been using a suppressor and you would have actually been the one using a suppressor, you would have still had that affected hearing loss, correct?
Help me understand the question, sir.
If you were using a suppressor as you were shooting on the range, I'm assuming it was a range, it could have been somewhere else, and your son did not have a suppressor, the impact to you would have been exactly the same as it is today.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
However, we would both have suppressors in that particular instance.
He answered my question, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, you have Mr. Knox Williams, is that the right name? From the American Suppressor Association, come forward and state your name and organization again for the record and begin, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you very much. My name is Nash Williams. I'm the president and executive director of the American Suppressor Association. We are a nonprofit trade association which represents the suppressor industry and suppressor consumers. I think that most of the high points have been hit, so I'm just going to explain a few things that I think need to be reemphasized. Again, suppressors have been regulated on the federal level since 1934. They are regulated under the same act, the National Firearms Act, which regulates suppressors and short-barrel rifles, among other things. There's an extensive process through which to purchase a suppressor, which includes background checks run by both the ATF and the FBI, and additional background checks conducted at the dealership at the point of purchase. 39 states currently allow civilians to own suppressors. Of those, 35 states allow civilians to use them while hunting in the field. To give you a little bit of background on other countries where suppressors are more readily available. The UK, where firearms are heavily restricted, it's very easy to buy a suppressor. In fact, they call suppressors firearm moderators or mufflers. Their term for a car muffler is a silencer, which is just a little inversion on words. But the technology is exactly the same. The science behind a suppressor is you're allowing hot gases, which are expanding rapidly out of the end of a firearm, to expand and cool in a controlled environment. Similar principle to taking a tight balloon and popping it with a needle, you're going to have a loud noise. If you take that same balloon and you untie the end of it and let the air out slowly, you will not have that loud pop. Same amount of energy is being dispersed, it's just a matter of how it's being dispersed. In terms of opponents of this legislation, they're going to say that, A, that these suppressors silence firearms, which again is not true. Under the best circumstances, firearm suppressors on .22 caliber firearms with subsonic ammunition, which is the quietest set that you can get, is going to register between 110 to 115 decibels. It's about as loud as a jackhammer. To my knowledge, I've never heard anyone say that a jackhammer is silent, let alone quiet. These things certainly do reduce the noise of a host firearm to much more manageable levels, and in the context of shooting, they make a significant difference. However, again, I think it needs to be continuously emphasized that they do not render a gunshot silent. In terms of their use in crime, I would challenge someone to come up with instances in the 39 states where they're legal, saying that this is a significant problem. Where we do see suppressors used in crime, almost exclusively they've been illegally manufactured. Someone who hasn't gone through the federal process, who either duct tapes a 2-liter bottle to the end of their firearm, or attaches an oil can, or goes to a Lowe's or Home Depot and makes a crude suppressor out of PVC pipe and crush washers. Those are the suppressors that turn up in crime. This bill has nothing to do with that. If they're not properly registered with the ATF, they are still illegal, and this bill would not change that. Criminals also, who do use firearms, want to be able to conceal them. I'm fairly certain that not many people are going to want to add 4 to 9 inches to the end of their gun, which would hinder their concealability to use these things in the street. Representative Den, to address one of your questions, sir, you asked earlier how these items would be enforced if there was an illegal transfer that occurred. At the home, it's very hard to do so. If you take these out to the range, which most people buy these things to use, and a law enforcement officer sees you using it, if you can't provide documentation through what's called your ATF Form 4, your approved paperwork back from the ATF, then they can arrest you. And the burden is on you to prove that this thing is registered to you. So to answer your question, in a home, it would be more difficult. When they're being used, law enforcement can ask for verification that these things are properly registered. To the gentleman who spoke before me, it is certainly worth noting that hearing protection in the form of earmuffs or earplugs is contingent upon their proper seal being attained. With earmuffs, it needs to have a complete seal around the ears. With earplugs, it has to have a deep insertion into your ear canal to be able to block out these high levels of sound. Suppressors diminish the report of a firearm by about 20 to 35 decibels, which is in effect about the same level as common earplugs or earmuffs. Hearing protection, traditional hearing protection devices are also contingent upon everyone around them using them and using them properly. Suppressors diminish the noise of that host firearm for everyone around, not just the person who's actually shooting. My final point, and one that I think is worth noting, is that even though most hunters understand that firearms are loud and that it's dangerous to shoot them without wearing hearing protection, without a suppressor, most hunters still choose to go into the field without hearing protection because they want to be able to hear their environment. They want to be able to maintain what's called auditory situational awareness, to be able to hear the animal that they're spending 4 hours at the crack of dawn in freezing temperatures trying to hunt. And most hunters aren't willing to sacrifice the hunt for the sake of their hearing because they think it's just one shot, it's not really going to make a difference. That could not be further from the truth, especially when you're talking about shotguns or centerfire rifle calibers, which can meter in excess of 180 decibels. Single exposure to that, whether you notice it or not, is going to damage your hearing. Most of the time, people who don't notice that it is, they don't notice it because they've already lost quite a bit of their hearing. And hunters who do have hearing aids and have significant hearing loss oftentimes have a false justification that I've already lost it, it can't get worse. And again, that couldn't be further from the truth. With that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Okay, before we get to Representative Hillstrom, on a couple of things that I've checked out. First of all, shot spotters or shot locators. There was some concern expressed about whether it would work on shot locators. I called the sergeant of the Minneapolis Police Department and was told that he believed that it would probably be problematic if it was a 22 with a low volume already to put a suppressor on that to be able to have it work. But he also said that shot locators are difficult to make work with shots fired inside buildings, inside cars, in an environmentally enclosed area. So there's a number of problems already with shot locators. He also said, though, that these shot locators recognize a sound that's been put into the database. So that if you took a suppressor-fired weapon, entered that into the database, that it could recognize it. So the contention that shot locators don't work is highly inaccurate. Also, I had some law enforcement concerns expressed, and most of it was because of the unknown. I had my researcher call, of the 39 states, we called Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Indiana, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, and Connecticut. And basically, they told us it was a complete non-issue, no reported problems. Now, the problem with some of these is they don't have a Bureau of Criminal Apprehension or a statewide collecting source. Some states don't. Either that or they're hard to get to or get back to us. But nobody reported a problem that I didn't report on this. I mean, of all the ones we called, it was a non-issue. And as far as them being stolen and used in crimes or being used in drive-bys or anything that was brought up, say if somebody had one legally owned in their house and somebody went in and stole it, still the statistics do not bear any problems like that out. If they were ended up and there have some been burglarized and stolen, they have not ended up, as far as we know, in a crime that we know of in those states. So there's a lot of fear of the unknown, it seems like, but not any empirical evidence to state that they have been a problem in any state that they're allowed for law enforcement. And sir, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, sir, I do. A couple of comments on that point. First off, talking about the ShotSpotter and the ability to register .22 fire, especially suppressed. 22, subsonic 22, you're generally shooting that projectile at about 900 to 1,000 feet per second, which is in subsonic range. You can go to a Walmart or any store that sells air guns and buy an air gun that's more powerful than a 22. Things that shoot generally .177 pellets at about 12 to 1,300 feet per second right off the shelf. So to that point, it's 22, not a powerful round. In addition to that, in terms of public safety, how often are 22s used in crime? My second point, and one that of the states that you queried, Florida and Arizona are both in the top 5 suppressor markets in the country in terms of the most suppressors in circulation in those states. If they're not seeing a problem with it, who would?
Your Representative Hilsberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have some real technical questions about this flyer that you passed out. So I think your testimony was that 39 states allow them and that 35 allow them while hunting. How many allow them for handguns? Do all of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The second is, does the length of the suppressor determine the amount of sound that's reduced from the shot of the firearm, or what has that impact? And do any of these states limit the length or the size or?
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, the amount of suppression is contingent upon a host of factors. Different manufacturers have different ways to reduce it. Some will tell you that the length will have an impact. Some will tell you that the diameter will have an impact. Usually speaking, it's the internal volume that you have and the way that you're rerouting both the energy and disrupting the gases from coming out hot. You're basically trying to create an environment where they can slowly cool. No states currently have any laws on the book that would say it has to meet this length or has to be this loud. Suppressors are treated the same across the board in terms of size and scope. Usually, generally speaking, the shorter the suppressor or the less the internal volume, the louder that it will be. There are some manufacturers that put out relatively short suppressors. Generally, the trade-off is that it's going to be much louder. I forget the other part of your question. I have an answer for it, but what did I miss?
Oh, you got all of those, but I have another one.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so does putting a suppressor on a firearm have an impact on the bullet? So if law enforcement is attempting to connect a bullet to a crime, does actually putting the suppressor on the end of the firearm require you to have both the gun and the suppressor in order to link it, or does it have no impact?
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, no, it doesn't. Suppressors, the way that they're currently designed, the bullet does not touch the suppressor at all. If the bullet is making contact with the suppressor, then you have an issue. But the diameter with which the bullet will travel through on the suppressor is larger than the bullet itself. and these are specifically designed so that the bullet does not touch them, so that the suppressor does not disrupt the flight. Thus, you wouldn't have any markings from the suppressor on the bullets, and in order to trace a bullet to its host firearm, whether or not it was suppressed would have no impact on that.
Okay. Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and a couple of questions for the testifier. Just so I know who you work for, you had mentioned the National Suppressor Association. How large is the membership?
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, it's the American Suppressor
I'm sorry.
Association. In terms of manufacturers or in terms of dealers or consumers?
Just in terms of sort of regular folks who are members.
So-
Your individual membership. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Currently, we represent 62 suppressor dealers nationwide and around 1,000 consumers. We also represent the overwhelming majority of manufacturers.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Representative Dean.
And of your overall budget, what percentages is from dealers or from manufacturers?
Mr. Williams, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, currently, the majority of it is from industry. However, that's largely because it wasn't until this year where we really made a push to expand our dealer network and our consumer network. It's sort of, we're a young organization. We formed in late 2011, and we're standing up, trying to expand.
Okay.
Representative Dean.
A couple other questions. And you had mentioned earlier England and the ability to obtain a suppressor in England. Gun laws in England, a lot different from the United States?
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, absolutely. It's much harder to purchase a firearm in the UK than it is to get a suppressor.
Okay. And, Mr. Chair, last question here. So should we pass this law, would I, as an individual, be able to go to a gun show and purchase a suppressor along with a gun without having a background check or going through the whole filing process?
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, absolutely not. In order to purchase a suppressor, you have to go through the federal process with the ATF, which includes submitting the Form 4, paying your transfer tax, waiting for them to approve it before you can get it. Even if you wanted to purchase it from an individual, they would have to transfer it to a dealer, which would require that entire process to take place for them transferring it to the dealer. Then the dealer would have to transfer it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick follow-up then. So I would not be able to purchase this at a gun show and walk in and walk out with a suppressor?
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, that's correct. You would have to go through the federal process before you were able to walk out with it.
Okay, let's see. Any other testifiers? Representative Anderson.
Mr. Chair, no.
Okay. If there's no more questions at the time, we'll bring up the opposition and state your name and title and begin, sir.
Mr. Chair and committee members, my name is Tim Spreck. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Minnesota Weapons Collectors. We had a little snafu. I had their legal counsel on the docket, and he got missed, and he was here, but I didn't see him in the room, so you're stuck with me as his replacement. Minnesota Weapons Collectors is the largest and oldest group of its kind, with a history spanning back over 50 years. The organization represents a large constituency of folks that not only collect but also shoot, whether it be target or sport shooting or hunting. And very briefly, this organization supports the bill as it's written. They think that the use of suppressors and the availability of suppressors would be very important to their clientele as a way to mitigate hearing loss, as you know, on the range or in the field. Hearing loss is an issue with people with firearms. So the organization does support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry to label as opposition. Now, anybody else in support that we didn't get on the list, because we just made up a list, but we didn't. Okay, those that, yeah, in the back, in support? Okay. We would just ask that if there's something new to cover from that was missed or something, but if you could not, regurgitate the whole testimony as well.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. First of all, you need my name and who I represent.
You bet.
My name is Nicholas Peterson. I represent myself just here as a citizen of the state. One thing I want to cover is I also suffered hearing loss. I was a member of the Minnesota National Guard for 10 years. In 2009, I went to Iraq in support of OIF. During that same year, the Department of Defense paid $1.1 billion because of hearing damages. The military has done a lot to give the proper equipment. However, some situations, even with the proper equipment, hearing loss is inevitable because hearing protection can fail, can fall off, perspiration will break the seal and allow pressure to come in. But one thing that hasn't been addressed is also home defense. You can have a suppressor, and if you're trying to protect your family or your children, and you need to discharge a weapon because of an intruder, you don't have time to get hearing protection for yourself or your children or your wife. So there's going to be hearing damage for yourself, communication is broken, and you don't know what's going on. You probably have lost your hearing, and your kids or your wife may have lost hearing as well.
Okay, well, I thank you, sir, for your testimony. I appreciate it. Now, would those who would oppose the bill want to come forward and state your name and organization and begin?
Hi, my name is Heather Martens, and I'm Executive Director of Protect Minnesota, working to end gun violence. We represent a network of 15,000 Minnesotans who are concerned about gun violence in our state and nation, and we are opposed to this bill. The arguments that we have heard include one argument is that few silencers are used in crimes currently. That's correct, and the reason for that is because silencers are far more strongly regulated than firearms at the federal level. There is a background check required, there is a storage requirement, there's a fee, there's registration, there's fingerprinting, none of which we have for firearms in a comprehensive way. So actually the argument that they're giving that a well-regulated firearm and silencer is a good idea. We should have those kinds of regulations. The problem is that when you dismantle those regulations at the federal level, which the industry is currently working to do with the support of the NRA lobbying arm, then we should be concerned that we still have safeguards at the state level. We do know that the federal government currently and the Congress currently is open to the dismantling of gun laws that keep us safe. We should keep Minnesota's gun laws in place to make sure that we have a way of protecting ourselves if the federal government changes its laws. I would also like to point out that the Chiefs of Police Association is opposed to this bill. I believe they sent you a letter to that effect, and I don't believe that they should be dismissed. I believe they are an important authority on this issue. I believe that they should be regarded with respect. And with regard to the City of Minneapolis shot spotters, we understand that the shot spotters are not perfect in any way, and we believe that there is no good reason to make it even more difficult for shot spotters to function correctly. Plenty of shootings occur with 22s. We know that, and we, at the Minneapolis level, and law enforcement in Minneapolis, can use all the help we can get to apprehend people who are committing shootings. I would like to also point out that silencers are not designed for hearing protection. Silencers were designed to allow people to commit murder and get away with it. I would like to point out that if it takes, excuse me.
Keep it quiet, please.
That one of the concerns that we have is if there is someone that is committing a mass shooting, if they do have the benefit of a silencer, they can claim more victims before they are caught, and that is a serious concern. We would like to prevent tragedy, not react after the fact. I guess in summation, I would like to point out that firearms are deadly weapons. They're not toys. They're not to be used irresponsibly. We expect firearms owners, and we do support owning firearms by responsible people. There are legitimate reasons to own firearms. However, if you are going to start saying that a silencer is a reasonable accessory to have on every firearm, that's encouraging irresponsible behavior. You do not have to exert as much care at the firing range or out when you're hunting if you can just rely on your silencer to protect your hearing and those of the others around you. We don't support that. And I would like to close my.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martins.
Martens.
Martins. And sorry for the outburst. Before we get to Representative Howe, I just wanted to point out, we didn't dismiss the chief's letter. It's in each packet, but I'm certainly not going to bring to the front any opposition. It's in their packets. I'm here in support. But I did have a long talk with the gentleman from the Chiefs of Police Association, and I told them that nothing in his Chief of Police's letter was backed up by any empirical data whatsoever. And of course, that was just my opinion. And but we did have a good conversation together about the letter, and it's in the packet. So, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the testifier, you mentioned that someone that was going to do a mass killing or multiple shootings would have an advantage. I see in some of our data here that in the past, in a study of 10 years of data, they had 12 cases of actually the firearm being fired with a silencer in a committing of a crime. Can you elaborate on any one of those 12 instances where multiple victims were shot with a silencer?
Mr. Chair. This goes back to my original point that, yes, silencers are used very, very rarely right now in crime because they are so strongly regulated. They are, you're subject to a very extensive background check. You are subject to registration, fingerprinting, a fee. All of those things are very difficult for a person of criminal intent or mental instability to pass, and that is why we have such a low level of silencer use in those kinds of crimes right now. However, the federal level regulation is now under attack at the federal level by the industry that we see here and by the NRA lobbying organization.
Representative Howe.
So how does this bill change the federal regulations that so stringently require all that? I guess I fail to see the connection.
Ms. Martins.
This does not, the state does not have the authority to change federal law. So no, it does not change the federal law. What it does is it removes the state safeguard against, if the federal law is not enforced, is under attack right now, we will have nothing at the state level to protect us.
Okay. Representative Hilstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have some language questions on the bill, so if you just let me know when it's the proper time for me to ask those, that would be great.
Okay. Representative Kwong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm trying to understand the logic in the testifier when indicating that someone wishing to kill someone with a suppressor on the weapon could stealthily do that or be non-detectable. Anyone that you know of that has a normal or even reasonable hearing, could they be snuck up on by 8 jackhammers?
Ms. Martins.
Mr. Chair, I think what this goes back to is that the federal government regulates these firearms, or regulates silencers to the degree that it's difficult for a person who wishes to commit harm to get them. If you are equating the sound of a shot fired with a silencer to 7 jackhammers. Is that what you're saying?
Representative Quam.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I use the number 8
8?
because that would be, I'm a scientist in real life, and therefore I work with facts and science. And when you have a decibel scale, you know, and something's 8 times louder, in order to produce that, you know, a normal person would think, well, you'd have about 8 of those. And you know, lawnmowers, you would have to have 32 lawnmowers. Maybe you're not as experienced with jackhammers around, but 32 lawnmowers stealthily sneaking up, maybe that's easier for you to understand, to be able to have somebody not notice.
Mr. Chair?
Martins?
I would say it depends entirely on how far away you are from the source of the noise, and I think that's scientifically backed up as well.
Okay, Representative, well, you want to do it now or wait till to see if there's any more opposition?
Why don't you see if there's any more testifiers?
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
are you done, Ms. Martins?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody who would like to testify in opposition? All righty. And remind the crowd to just hold it down if there's something that you find objectionable. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Richard Mazer. I'm a retired general surgeon, board certified general surgeon. A little bit about my credentials, if you will, or lack of credentials. I know absolutely nothing about guns. I don't own a gun, and when I was serving in the Air Force as a general surgeon, we rarely used guns. And so that's my lack of knowledge. My credentials might include the fact that my residency was at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. Just as a matter of context, at the time of my training, Kings County Hospital is 10 times larger than Hennepin County Medical Center is today. And in the year that I spent on the trauma service, I had the misfortune of having to see firsthand, literally and figuratively, the effectiveness of gunshots as far as their killing capacity. And I don't know how many people in this room have had the experience that I have had where my hands were inside the abdomen of a living human being who bled to death because I was unable to save his life. And that was not a singular occasion, that was unfortunately more than once. So that's my background. On another personal note, I owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Rothman, who spoke earlier. First of all, Mr. Rothman helped me navigate the parking meter for the visitors' parking lot, which was something that I was unable to do without his help. And then in conversation, Mr. Rothman made me aware of something that I was not aware of. I came here as a general supporter of Protect Minnesota. But what Mr. Rothman made me aware of was the fact that this suppressor issue is apparently a health issue. And I know a little bit about health issues as a physician, and I want to focus on that specific issue, which I want to insert a little bit of skepticism here. And I insert that skepticism as a physician. My skepticism is that there is a lot of commentary here today that correlates the use of suppressors with improved hearing protection or hearing protection. There may be some sketchy evidence. Mr. Rothman cited some sources. I would, to use the parlance, the jury is out on this. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm not an expert on this, but generally speaking, as a physician, I can say that many of the so-called scientific facts of our world as doctors have subsequently been shown to be totally false. And these are, quote, scientific facts, unquote, that were researched meticulously and met all the standards of research, and subsequently, as I said, were shown to be totally false. So my only purpose is to say, in summary, that it sounds logical to say that if you reduce decibel levels by using suppressors, that you will actually protect hearing. As logical as that sounds, until the outcome is clearly shown to be the case, I, for one, would be skeptical, and as a physician, I would advise all non-physicians to have that same skepticism. And I'll be glad to field any questions or comments that anybody has to make.
Okay, Representative Quam, keep in mind we got 12 minutes left and a couple of testifiers left. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would staff be able to tell us approximately how many statutes have decibel levels for health and safety and where equipment's required? I assume that there are some, so we understand just how the state and courts treat decibel levels.
Mr. Diebel.
Mr. Chair, Representative Quam, unfortunately, I have no idea. I don't deal in OSHA or other regulations on public safety, so I'm not aware of those in the criminal statute.
But we do get your point. Okay, thank you, sir. Oh, sorry. Representative Dean had a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you come back quick? So earlier we heard testimony that a suppressor would reduce the sound on a gun from 167 decibels to 132 decibels. And we've heard a lot of testimony on 132 decibels is, the sound of a jackhammer. So when I'm thinking about the issue of health and hearing loss, I'm assuming that there's an aggregate that really has an impact. And since you're a doctor, I'll ask you. So if it's a type of thing that we're suppressing it a little bit, if the aggregate still is fairly large, I'm assuming that it's still going to impact hearing with some hearing loss.
And then, while you answer that, what kind of a doctor are you, if you could answer?
Pretty good one.
A what one?
My boards are in general surgery, and
Okay.
and with all due respect, I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm simply, my point today is simply to introduce a certain amount of doubt here as to the validity. It sounds logical that if you put a suppressor on a gun, that it's going to protect hearing. It sounds very logical. All I'm saying is that the history of medicine is replete with similar logical formulations that turned out, because the human body doesn't follow logical courses, turned out to be totally false. That's my message.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And ma'am, if you could state your name and organization again, and go ahead and, if you could, we're not going to cut you off, but if you could keep it as short as possible.
I'll try. Again, my name is Joan Peterson. I'm here from Protect Minnesota and the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. I was just listening to the prior testimony, and I had some questions and concerns. The first one is, why did the federal government determine that suppressors needed the kind of regulations they needed in the first place? And I think we all know the answer to that. I think we can look back to the days of Elliot Ness and the mafia and all of those things that we associate with suppressors. So there are and were reasons why suppressors are subject to the federal regulations that they are subject to, and I think we need to think about that when you're reviewing your reasons for passing this. In preparation for coming here today, I asked probably half a dozen or so hunter friends of mine, including my husband, who happens to be a hunter and a gun owner, and also happens to be a physician, about the need for suppressors for hunting, and they all gave me the same look. What? Why? None of them thought a suppressor was a good idea. None of them could see a reason for a suppressor for hunting. And I don't believe you have bevy of physicians here lining up to tell you about the health risks of hunting and/or the health benefits of suppressors, I suggest that you might want to get that. I think that would be very important. I don't believe anybody, aside from the gentleman who just came here, has been asked to testify about the benefits of suppressors on firearms, and I think that would be a good idea for you to find out. I am a former speech language pathologist. I've worked with children with hearing loss. People lose their hearing for many reasons. This might be one of them, but they do lose their hearing for many reasons. And your question was a good one, the representative who asked about public safety and decibel levels. What else are we protecting people from? 100 decibels is loud. I know that from having worked with kids who have hearing loss. 100 decibels is loud. We are going from 200 to 140, supposedly. I guess that's still loud. And I actually do know people who have lost their hearing from gunshots. So I understand that it's a problem. I'm just not sure that this is the solution to the problem. And I would also like to point out to you that one of the reasons you're here today hearing about this is not because there has been a hue and cry from a lot of people to have suppressors on guns. It is because the gun industry wants this. The suppressor industry wants this. At one time, the NRA didn't even want the suppressor group with them because they knew that suppressors made guns look really bad. They've changed their minds. There's profit here when people go to buy suppressors now. You heard that they're going to cost $500 to $1,000. There's profit to be made. I suggest you think about that. And if you think this is about hunting, I also suggest I happen to look up the ads from the silencer companies. And if you think this or this or this or this looks like a hunter needing a suppressor, then I ask you to consider what you're doing here today. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next. Looks like we aren't going to get done today. We'll probably quit promptly at noon and then come back at immediately after session.
Mr. Chairman, representatives, my name is Kathy Pernew, and I'm here with Protect Minnesota. I did not intend to speak today, and I'll keep it short and sweet. I oppose this as an ordinary voter in the state of Minnesota. I happen to agree with the police officers who suggest that silencers could render ineffective the shot spotters that are in use around the city of Minneapolis. I live in the city of Minneapolis. Someone spoke earlier about people who have a negative reaction to the sound of a gunshot. I have a negative reaction to the sound of a gunshot. Somebody shot out a window in my house a few years ago. So no, I don't want anything to change a law that would make it easier for people to avoid being detected by the shot spotters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then on the police, once again, you said police officers in plural. That was the chiefs of police that sent that letter, and you don't see the Sheriff's Association or the MPPOA here today, so. All right, next. Welcome, ma'am. State your name and organization and begin.
Hi, my name is Kyla Cromer, and I have a t-shirt from Protect Minnesota, but I paid $25 for it. I don't represent them in any way. So I'm here as a mom and a citizen and a neighbor, and I want to point out that the lack of empirical evidence that you just mentioned is similar to the lack of empirical evidence that you received talking on the phone when you were asking about the shot spotters. Because something doesn't work perfectly does not mean you abandon it and just continue to erode its efficacy. But what I'd really like to say is that my best friend's brother was shot in his bed at 15 years old in West Bloomington many years ago. And I live very near to Accent Signage, where there was a mass shooting or multiple shooting in Bryn Mawr, Minneapolis. I found out later that My daughter's doctor was the daughter of the fellow that owned that business. So they were at work, obviously. My brother's work was assaulted by a gunman, and he had to climb out a window to get away. And so my main point is that although we obviously need to consider any number of kinds of equipment for our military and for our police officers to keep them safe, people who are hunting or who are on the gun range for sport are engaging purposely and of their choice in potentially risky behavior. Now, my best friend's brother was sleeping in his bed. My brother and the people at Accent Signage were at work. So is it more important to protect the rights of people who choose to participate in risky behaviors, or people endanger the public health of people who are sleeping in their homes, or they're just going about their day at work?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anything else?
No, I just wanted to reframe it that way because nothing I've heard has really come around to that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you
very much.
Sir, we got about 3-4 minutes left, and then we'll recess until tonight. You want to testify now? We might as well get all the opposition in here, and then tonight we'll just have more discussion and questions by members. Go ahead, sir.
Well, my name is Larry Parks. I live in Plymouth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm a member of Protect Minnesota. I'm also active in the movement of building safer communities through sensible gun laws. I'm speaking as an individual, but many of us that support these sensible gun laws are very respectful of gun owners, shooters, collectors, hunters, and so on. We're also, I particularly am very respectful of the Second Amendment and the rights that provides for. And I respect the right of people to carry concealed weapons if that's their choice. I'd like to suggest that for this House File 1434, that the wording should be more restrictive if the committee and the Minnesota legislature wishes to pass this. One, I would like to see a restriction that these suppressors, as they've been discussed, would be permitted only on gun ranges. I could appreciate the need for reducing the noise, and I will try to speak more loudly so those affected by gun noise can hear my comments, but I would like to see the restriction of the suppressors only for gun ranges. I'd also like to see a restriction on the level of noise reduction that a suppressor is permitted to have in the state of Minnesota. You know, as we all know, that technology innovations in every field, including guns and gun accessories, continues at a rapid pace. So let me ask you, would you be supportive of this bill if the suppressors reduce the noise below, let's say, 70 decibels? I mean, the information that was provided showed the suppressors generally reduce the noise a little bit higher than a jackhammer. But what if it was suppressed, so it would be closer to a silencer type of thing for the stealth type of shooting? Would you still support that? So I would like to see wording in the legislation to limit the noise reduction from a suppressor to not less than 110 decibels, which is the jackhammer level of noise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more, and then we'll wrap up the, and then I think when we come back tonight, we'll, I'd like it if you would pick one person from each side for rebuttal tonight. We'll give you a couple of minutes apiece, and just one person each. We'll close the public testimony after this gentleman here. Go ahead.
Hello, Bill Cross again, Plymouth, Minnesota. I'm a gun owner and a past very active hunter. I own guns for hunting. I don't own them for defending myself from imaginary enemies that are coming to get me, and for the extreme, this would include our government. The way we handle guns in this country is completely irresponsible. When a child can get a hold of a parent's gun and kill their little brother or sister, we should see that we are doing something wrong. When a 2-year-old can take their mother's gun from her purse and kill her in a Walmart, we should see that we are doing something wrong. When a child at a gun range kills the instructor with a fully auto Uzi, because of the recoil, we should see that we are doing something wrong. The gun lobby believes the answer to our problems with how poorly we handle guns in this is more guns. If we are in a flood, the last thing we need is more water. We have become very irresponsible and plain stupid how we handle guns in this country. Now the gun lobby is marketing to our elected leaders our gun suppressors. Just what we need. Let's do our damage with less noise. It won't attract as much attention. As a gun owner, I see this as an attempt to open up Minnesota as a market for the manufacturers of suppressors. This is all about making money and not caring about the damage it can do in an already gun-crazed society. Follow the money. Every testifier up here but one had a monetary value for their testimony in favor of this. Every one of them except one. This is not about hearing loss. That's an excuse. They already testified that it's loud even with the suppressor. So then they argue that, well, we won't need to wear hearing protection, but it's still loud. So what is it? Is it not loud? Is it loud? I fired many guns. With a suppressor or not, I haven't done it with a suppressor, but they're loud. As a hunter, I see this as an easy way for hunters and mainly poachers to take game illegally and not have the noise to attract attention. When I'm a hunter, I want to know the other activity, shooting, that is going on around me. And also about the comment about the suppressors available in Britain. As anybody knows, I think Britain has some rather different laws regarding firearms than our country. Actually, most countries have vastly different laws about firearms than we do, including Canada, which has some common sense in the way of how they handle firearms and their accessories. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you wait till tonight?
Can I?
That'd be 30 seconds.
Okay, you got 30 seconds.
Okay, thanks.
29, 28.
My name is Josh Freilich, and I thank you for the couple of seconds that you're giving me before lunch here. I do not oppose this, and I do not have any financial stake in the suppressor or firearm industry. I happen to manage a technology firm, and I have a passion for firearms. With that passion, I have children that I'm engaging at an appropriate age into firearms and their use, and suppressors seem common sense to me. I don't want to expose my children to any unnecessary risk, while at the same time sharing my passions with them. Again, no monetary stake. This is not my business. This is my passion. This is something that I get excited about. And so I want to protect my children. I want to protect the people that I shoot with, and I want to protect my hearing. And I'm willing to, as a gun owner, go through all the necessary NFA steps, government, federal steps to make this work. So I had 30 seconds. I took it.
I thank you very much. Appreciate it. Members, if it's okay with you folks, we'll have to come back 15 minutes after session in this room where we will have more discussion and questions as long as you would like, and then vote on the bill, and we'll have opposition and support. Oh, Representative Considine, go ahead. Yeah, I'll give a rebuttal. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we all agree that the most compelling argument for suppressors is hearing loss, and yet the one doctor that we heard testify today cast some doubt on it. I'd like to move we table this until we can hear from an audiologist as to whether it's going to help or not.
Are you?
I'm moving to table it until we can hear from an audiologist or some medical professional that can tell us for sure exactly how beneficial it'll be.
Actually, we're in recess.